Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the David A. Hughes podcast. I'm very pleased today to be joined by Debbie Evans and Ant Critchley. So, Debbie is a retired state registered nurse. She trained and qualified at Royal Free Hospital, London, where after postgraduate experience at St Bartholomew's Hospital, London, and Stoke Mandeville Hospital, Buckinghamshire, she returned to the Royal Free as a ward sister. Debbie is a mum of 5 and a granny to 5 beautiful grandchildren. As a mature student, Debbie graduated with a PG Cert at Birmingham University in autism spectrum conditions. She served between 2010 and 2015 as a government advisor at the Department of Health on the Autism Programme Board. In 2020, Debbie delivered a virtual presentation to the late Ian Crane's Alternative View conference called In Plain Sight 2020 Vision, where she was one of the first to speak out against the government's COVID-19 agenda and the proposed vaccine rollout. That's where Debbie met Brian Gerrish from UK Column, where she became a health correspondent before leaving in 2025. Ant Critchley is the founder of Stellify, a multi-layered platform exploring truth, sovereignty, and spiritual awakening through podcasts, decoding, and grounded inquiry. A former publican who walked away after witnessing government overreach, Ant now blends his background in counselling and Reiki with journalism and weekly commentary on banter, spelled B, capital A-N-T-E-R, with Debbie, offering a heart-led lens on the world's unfolding chaos. So, Debbie and Ant, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, David.
Thank you very much for inviting us, David.
Well, I'm very pleased to have you here. You reached out to me because of a new initiative that you have unfolding, a new platform that you're launching, which you are calling Camp 3 News. So obviously this was of great interest to me, given that Camp 3 is my term. So Debbie, do you want to kick us off just by telling us a little bit, give us an overview about this project? How did it come into being? What's it all about?
Oh, Camp 3. I'm so excited. So if I get a bit passionate, and I've made a few notes because I'm so delighted to be able to talk about it. So if I refer to my notes, please excuse me. But so I've learned a lot. I'm not a journalist. I'm a gobby granny. I'm same as everyone else probably that's watching, just very interested in what's going on, and I seem to join the dots. And I've learned an awful lot since being in front of the screen. And normally I'm not a person that likes, my kids haven't got pictures of me when they were kids. I always was behind the camera, never in front. So I've learned an awful lot, and I've learned that in 2020 things changed. COVID came and hit us all in one way, form or another, and everything seemed to change. And I've learned a lot. So looking back at, I mean, you're the expert on the war, World War I, World War II. The battlescape has changed. We are now living in an era where tanks and planes will be part of a war, but we've got cyber, we've got biological, we've got chemical. The landscape of war has changed, as has the landscape of media. And when I was growing up, we'd switch the TV on and it would be BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, and then later on Channel 4. I even remember the advent of BBC Two, and that's all we had. And the radio, Radio 1, Radio 2, and then a few independent radios. But since COVID, there's been a complete explosion in what I didn't really know existed, which was what we call the alternative media. So the landscape of media, going from newspapers and the 6 o'clock news and maybe the odd radio broadcast back in the 1940s, is now wall-to-wall news, coming from every single avenue you can possibly think of, whether it be citizen journalists, whether it be experts in specific fields, legal experts, medical experts taking on podcasts, whether it be alternative media news channels. There's just so much choice. And since COVID, it exploded. And I think now we have to be very aware that this is what's going on. And when I read your amazing Camp 1, Camp 2, Camp 3 framework, pennies started to drop. And I've spent the last year learning an awful lot about alternative media, legacy media. And let's face it, you know, legacy media we know who views, we get ratings, we get an idea into who funds the BBC. Raised eyebrows. We know who funds Sky, we know who funds Channel 4, all of the big names that we're used to. So in a way, there's a degree of transparency with legacy media. Whereas with alternative media, you don't know who anybody is. They've just popped up out of nowhere, and all of a sudden they've got hundreds of thousands of views and millions of subscribers, and you think, wow, and then there's others that are smaller, and then so it became a whole muddied water. So I think what I saw was a landscape changing. And when I was aware of your camp 1, 2, 3 framework, which I know that you'll explain because it's your concept, the penny suddenly dropped that I thought I was in camp 2, which you'll explain in a minute. I thought I was in camp 3, sorry. All along, I thought I was in camp 3. I was convinced I was in camp 3. And then I suddenly found out I wasn't. So I guess I have to throw the question back to you, David. And could you explain, before we bring Ant in, because Ant was kind of inspiration too, but I have to throw the question back to you, David, in camp 1, camp 2, camp 3, perhaps you could explain your concept, and then I can explain how we could try to make that a reality, and Ant can try to make that a reality.
Yes, of course. It's probably a useful thing to do at the beginning of our discussion. So my 3 camps of awareness framework, for anyone who's not familiar with it, goes as follows. Camp 1 is the mainstream camp. It's for those who believe essentially everything that their politicians and their television and their radio tells them. They believe in the official narratives, and they've never really learned to think critically, question, or get beyond those dominant narratives. Camp 2 is for people who have learned to ask questions and who do have their doubts about some of the main things that we're being told, be it what happened on 9/11, the origins of the financial crisis, the true nature of the alleged pandemic, etc. And there are those who realize essentially that they have been lied to by the authorities. They are asking critical questions of their own. It's quite a difficult process to go through, not just intellectually, but emotionally, to understand and to recognize that actually many of the key ideas that you've been raised to believe are in fact the products of propaganda and aren't true. And for those people who make it into camp 2, they're perhaps, as you were describing, Debbie, delighted to find a place where they seem to have encountered lots of other like-minded individuals who are asking the critical questions and challenging power. Unfortunately, what they don't realize is that camp 2, like camp 1, is essentially a form of holding pen in terms of people's awareness. And from the very beginning, it has been constructed, I think, by the military, and it's led by certain key actors, certain influencers, if you like, people who are heavily promoted, have very high view counts, are able to write article after article, give interview after interview while flying all around the world, going to conference after conference. Not really very credible in terms of a one-person operation, but nevertheless, they exert a huge degree of influence, and they carry a lot of people in camp 2 with them. And the purpose of camp 2 is essentially to make sure that people never make it into camp 3, which is the truth, or something approximating the truth. And camp 3 is it's a very difficult place to be because the truth is often very hard to swallow. It's a fairly lonely place to be. I don't think there's that many people in camp 3. Yeah, I mean, the delineations between the 3 camps are not absolutely hard and fast. People do move between the camps, but I think overall it's a useful framework for thinking about the nature of the news and the content that we are consuming, so that not only are we asking critical questions about the official news, but we're also thinking very hard about the alternative media scene, so-called, and the kinds of information that we are acquiring from there. And it does take work. It does take effort. I've only been in this space for 18, 20 months or so. And my experience of it increasingly has been that Camp 3 is very small compared to Camp 2, and Camp 2 is pretty small compared to Camp 1. And so it's almost like peeling back the layers of an onion, peeling back layers and layers of deceit until you finally get to something approximating the truth. So hopefully that will give viewers and listeners an overview of what this three camps idea is and what Camp 3 is. Shall we turn to you now, Ant? Do you want to tell us a little bit about your background, how you came to know Debi, and how you have become involved in Camp 3 News?
Yeah, well, I mean, I had a very strange spiritual awakening back in 2012, which took me on probably won't have time to go on that. It's a podcast in its own, really, but it took me on a strange path, and I ended up signing for a pub. It's called The Crown, the day they shut the pubs. So I was already in a pub, but I was coming out of one because it was a bit of a drug den, and we were getting some quite nasty threats from the village. I wanted to get the family out of there, so we found a pub where my son goes to school, and we went and signed for this pub and got back to the other pub, and Boris came on the Sky News and announced that he was shutting the pubs and had to kick everyone out. And we moved basically to the Crown the following day. I knew what was going on, David. I like I say, I've been going on some kind of weird awakening, if you like, since 2012. So I knew a lot of it was nonsense, but I felt that I had to succeed in where we're at. I didn't know how long this thing was going to be going on for, so we played the game initially until they decided that you need a Scotch egg to have a pint, and then I kind of lost my head a little bit with it and thought, I'm done. I'm not treating people like cattle anymore. This is not what a pub is. I'm come here as a landlord. I'm here to be a host, and that's what I'm going to do. So I refused, and we lost the village effectively because we were in a village of 5 pubs, and we were then the super spreaders of the village. So we lost the village. We became a hub for people that were seeing through it. So people were coming from miles around. We had regular gatherings. It became what we called Truth or Tuesdays on a Tuesday evening, and you would have 100 to 150 people arriving. The village weren't too happy about that either because we became very political. And ultimately, come towards the end of 2021, we ran out of money, because once you've lost your regulars, you're not going to survive. And we knew that. I sat up with my missus, who's disabled, one night and said, look, I'm really sorry, but we're going to lose everything because I'm not doing this. I'm not treating people like this. This is nonsense. So ultimately, that's what happened. And I had a breakdown after that, a complete exhaustion. We lost everything. We lost our home, obviously. We lost a lot of money. And I went into counselling and Reiki because leading up to that, I thought what I want to do is help people. I could see the mental health situation. I was counselling people anyway in the pub most of the time. So I could see what was going on. So I thought I want to get into that. And obviously I've had my own experience. Once I pulled myself through my own mire, I was able to help people through theirs. That was my plan. But the whole concept of COVID and what has been happening to us wouldn't leave me. So I was involved in a project called the Drake Michigan Project for a while with an old friend of mine, where we were doing podcasts. And like Debbie was saying, I was always behind the camera. My background is media. It's websites, it's creating videos and graphic design and social media and things like that. That's my background. Always been behind the camera. But when I did this project with my old friend, I was in front of the camera and I started enjoying it. I was like, I'm better than I thought. And when that project ended, I created Stellify because I wanted to carry it on, but I wanted to dive deep into why we are treated the way we are treated. So a lot of my channel goes into a lot of the esoteric kind of things. you could call it Camp 4 in a way, because it dives deeper into realms that people probably wouldn't even discuss of why these elite types are treating humanity in the way they do with control. And it was interesting that through this process, I have a little Patreon. One of my Patreons said, you need to interview Debi Evans. Now, I used to watch UK Column News through my time at the pub. This was, you know, the Truth of Tuesdays, people were turning up with UK Column T-shirts. You know, it was a tribe, you could call it. You know, that's what it was, you know, because people had found their home. And I hadn't watched UK Column for a couple of years, I'll be honest with you, and I hadn't really heard of Debi. But I thought I'll reach out to UK Column News. So I emailed them, and it took a little while, but eventually I got an email back saying, Debi will be in touch. And that was when I got in touch with Debi, and we had a podcast, and we had a smashing podcast, really deep dive in some of the NHS topics. I kind of moved away a little bit with the esoteric stuff, but then I keep finding myself being drawn back into the real world, into Camp 3, if you like, what's really going on. And me and Debi just hit it off, and we did a couple of podcasts, and we kept in touch, and we thought, well, let's do a little news channel, you know, we'll just have a bit of fun, and we'll talk about what's going on in the world, the craziness of this place that we find ourselves in. And I think me and Debi just really hit it off, and I love Debi to bits. You know, we text each other all the time. We're always in contact, and we thought, we've got something going here. You know, there's something really good. It's entertaining, but it's valuable. You know, people are in. It's a small channel. You don't get me wrong. You know, I'm only getting, I think we get 200, 300 views of a podcast release, but they're enjoying it. The people, they were getting a little bit of a regular coming back and enjoying it. And we thought, there's some momentum here, and people want this. They want authenticity, because there's a lack of it, a huge lack of authenticity. And I think Debi and I offer that. So we were talking about, how do we ramp this up a bit? You know, we're going to rebrand Banter with Debi. And that's why we said, like, well, David's got this Camp 3 concept, and that's kind of perfect. So that's where, for me, that's where it goes, really.
Thanks, Ant. Yeah, wow. I'm so sorry to hear about what happened to you. Debi referred to wartime conditions. That's precisely what this is. And war works through alternative means, shall we say, these days. It's not all tanks and bullets and planes and so on. You know, this is how you target ordinary people, dissenters, those who don't go along with the narrative. So all power to you, Ant, for sticking with this and doing everything that you've done. Really impressive.
Thank you.
Debi, so Ant's led us up very nicely, really, to where we are now. So why this moment to launch this platform, and what are you hoping to achieve with Camp 3 News?
So I'm really excited about Camp 3, and the last year has been a roller coaster where I've learned more and more and more, and we have news coming in from absolutely everybody and everywhere seemingly, and trying to cut through all of the news is extremely difficult. I mean, I think it was the World Economic Forum that coined the phrase that this information cascade, to confuse people, to frighten people, to distract people. And you know, I know how big Camp 1, the legacy media, is, but since COVID, I see this Camp 2 as being like huge. It's like a jungle. I mean, it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger every day. And how do you choose what you're listening to is right? We're living in an era of AI where you don't know if you're watching something that's real or if it's AI generated. You don't know if the news is coming from authentic people. You don't know their intention, and I think intentionality has got a lot to do with this, and egos have a lot to do with it too. I'm basically just a gobby granny, and although people may see me as popping up on the screen and having a bit of a rant and taking a few people to task and challenging things, I'm quite a private person. So I've never, as Ant said, I never imagined that I'd be in this position. I'm a nurse, I'm a granny, I'm a mum. Never thought I'd be in this position. However, over the years, I think it takes an awful long time to trust people, an awful long time to earn their trust. And it takes like a millisecond to lose it. And I was very fortunate when I first started appearing on UK Column and other interviews. I was being interviewed and was involved in all sorts of podcasts and met some amazing people. And I was always very interested in their stories and wanting to know where their evidence was coming from. I was always very careful who I spoke to. I always have been, or tried to be anyway, to discern. And with all of this news coming in from everywhere, it is difficult to know who's telling the truth. What narrative may people be following, for what reasons? Where's funding coming from? And how do you filter the truth out? And I think what Ant said, the one word is authenticity. And it's how authentic is that person? And what is their intention? Why are they doing what they are doing? Are they doing it for a celebrity status? Because we've had a lot of new names pop up over the last 5 years, which have now become almost household names. So are people doing it for attention? Are people doing it for financial reasons? Are people doing it because they've lost their job and they're simply having to find another, and this is an easy way of feeding their families, which is absolutely fine. But it's put a lot of people in very vulnerable positions where they've taken up podcasts or they've taken up doing vlogs, and there's so much of it. You have to ask yourself, what is real, what is not real, who is doing what for what reason. When I started speaking out, I was a volunteer with UK Column for 18 months prior to being on screen with them. So my intention was only ever to join dots and to stay behind the screen. Actually, I was quite happy to stay behind the screen and just research. I researched 16 hours a day. It's not something that I find a chore. I'm absolutely hooked in. It's like my obsession. It's my guilty pleasure. I love it. So I was quite happy behind the screen, really. But when I started on the screen, a lot of people were listening to me, and a lot of people were trusting what I was saying, because I was always trying to back it up with evidence, hard evidence. I believe that if you're going to say something, it's with hard evidence, and try to say it in a calm and measured way, not to incite fear, not to get people frightened, but to also give people solutions, because people want solutions from genuine people. And my intention was never to be famous, never to have a presence on social media. I hate social media, my kids will tell you. My intention was never to make money, make a fortune on this. All I ever wanted to do, all anybody ever wants to do, is to survive. So I found that Camp 2, there was some amazing people, and are some amazing people in Camp 2 who didn't perhaps were aware that there was a Camp 3. And I wasn't until you highlighted it to me. And then I suddenly realized, and have realized over the last year, that I was never in the right camp. So what we want to bring to Camp 3 is Camp 3's for everybody, everybody that follows our ethics, really, if you like, that we're here for the good of humanity, not for money, not for fame, not for fortune, not for trips abroad, not for lots of equipment. We work on basic equipment. We give our time voluntarily. We do what we do because we believe that what we do is important for people moving forward. This is for humanity. And I know that sounds really cringeworthy, and it does, but genuinely from the bottom of my heart, I know that myself and Ant, we don't do what we do for money or presence. We do what we do because we have a habit, or have a skill, if you like, of joining a few dots that other people may not see. And we also are able, through our experience now, to discern as well, as to, well, ask questions. Well, who is that person? Who is that? What is being said, and how did that come about? And does that fit with what we're seeing? And ask questions and challenge and debate, because debate is healthy. So we're hoping to bring not just Camp 3 a website, but Camp 3 a whole new concept. This is a whole new concept because there are going to be many people watching that are going to perhaps now question, well, actually, who have I been watching in Camp 2? Who is that person, or who are those people, or who is that channel, and where did they suddenly pop up from? And maybe they can be assured that we in Camp 3 will do all we possibly can. We're going to make mistakes, we're going to slip up, but we're going to do all we possibly can to bring people the truth with hard-backed evidence as far as we can take it. So the Camp 3 is for everybody, for everyone that wants to join us, that follows our principles and our moral compass.
Yeah, I certainly resonate with much of what you've said there, Debbie. This landscape, as you say, has really exploded since 2020. And I know several people now who feel fatigued, actually, because there's too much information to absorb. And they've either kind of given up on trying to absorb it all, or they've just reduced their content consumption to maybe just a couple of content creators because they can't deal with the volume. So I think it's a good idea to try and find a way of cutting through the noise and narrowing things down. And I think you make good points about intentionality as well. Like you, I just wanted the quiet life, really. I would have been quite happy to just remain in academia and just do my thing. But circumstances are what they are. And we've been kind of propelled into these positions now of becoming public figures, and it certainly isn't for the money. I mean, this is a financially precarious mode of existence. So yeah, I can entirely resonate with the points you make. So where can we find Camp 3 news? And are you able to put up a
Yeah, I can
stuff on
share.
screen, Ant?
I can share. So it's still very much a skeleton at the moment. It's the URL is camp3news.com, the number 3, and Debbie's been fantastic in writing a few articles which are on there already, and we are likely to change some copy. There might be some design changes still to come yet, but the fact is it's there and it works, and you can actually still, it's all there. You can subscribe to the newsletter already, because that's one of the important things I find, especially with digital ID being a big issue at the moment, and the potentials of will we even be on YouTube or any social media platforms in the near future? I don't know. That's going to be a choice, individual choice for everyone moving forward. But that at least would allow us to stay in contact with people. We will have the streams going on here as well. I mean, at the moment it is banter with Debbie, but we will obviously move that to Camp 3 when we're ready, basically. So yeah, it's the website is there. People can visit it, no problem. Get in touch. I always welcome people's ideas as well, and you can contact us there as well. So, but we are going to have channels. We are going to look maybe to have a social channels in place, a new YouTube channel in place at some point. But I think at the moment, whilst we're finding our feet with Camp 3, we will stream to Stellify, because that's the easiest place, because there is an audience it's a small audience, but it's an audience to work with. And then hopefully then we'll move up and move into its own brand, really. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, from humble beginnings, may it grow.
Yes.
And we have invited, I mean, many that know me will know that my very good friend in Camp 3, Cheryl Granger, she and I still do a huge amount of work together, and she'll be writing and coming on to speak to us as well, as we hope you will, and other people that are in Camp 3. And I think that, you know, another thing that I find very valuable about Camp 3 is that a long time ago, and I'll only briefly tell you about it, but a long time ago, I created a self-identification framework for neurodiversity and neurotypicality. So people on the autism spectrum and those that aren't. So those that were on the autism spectrum, we used to describe as jelly beans, of which I'm one. And each jelly bean is very different, with a different color and a different flavor, and some you might love and some you might not love. And then I described, this was to my children, how I was trying to describe to my children who are all also on the spectrum. And I love them all, and they're all doing super well, by the way. And the neurotypicals I would describe as marshmallows, who were mainly pink and white, and were lovely and fluffy and gorgeous, but eat too many of them and you might be a little bit sick. And they never ever got grubby. They were only ever pink and white. There were never lots of different colors. So I had this self-identification method, which worked very well. And I had a whole system called Jelly Bean, which some people watching me now may remember. And so when your Camp 1, Camp 2, Camp 3 came out, not only was it an opportunity to cut through the noise and to bring people the truth, or as close as we could to the truth, but it was also a way of, when you speak to people, you can actually identify who they are and where they are on their awareness. I don't like the word asleep and awake. I think it's a little bit derogatory. So I prefer the word awareness. But if you're, I mean, when I speak to members of some members of my family and friends who are still hanging on every word of the BBC and Channel 4 and ITV, you know quite clearly that they're in Camp 1. So your conversation, you can then change your conversation, ameliorate perhaps, or maybe just calm your conversation down a little bit, knowing that they're in Camp 1 and that they're probably, whatever you're going to say to them isn't going to make too much of a difference. Whereas if you know that somebody's in Camp 2, and you know the names and you know the big channels in Camp 2, if you know they're in Camp 2, then you know that they are more open perhaps to debate, whether that debate is climate change, or whether it's COVID, or whether it's CBDC, digital ID, whatever it is. You think, okay, they're Camp 2, so they're maybe a little bit more open, a little bit more receptive to a bit of debate. So maybe you can approach a conversation slightly differently. And then you'll meet somebody that says, oh, actually, I'm in Camp 3. And you think, oh, okay, so now they're on perhaps more of a similar waveband to me. And then you feel a little bit safer, perhaps. I'm not saying you should feel totally safe. You still have to be very careful what you say to people. And I think you do in this day and age. You really do have to discern. It's not just what you watch online. It's who you speak to in reality, who you speak to in the supermarket, what you say to your neighbours. Everyone's having to be very careful. But I think it gives you an idea of where that level of awareness, and that's why your Camp 1, Camp 2, Camp 3 is an awareness framework. It's bringing an awareness not only to the existence of Camp 3, because I never knew where to go, and now I do. It's got a physical, we've got a Camp 3, but it's also bringing an awareness into where that person is on their journey of awareness.
Yes, and this is one of the reasons why I think it's important to keep working on elaborating this theoretical scaffold. There's a strategic element involved as well, and I know a lot of people found it very difficult during COVID. Those who could see through the propaganda and the lies, and more or less wanted to kind of shake everyone else awake and proselytize, perhaps. And of course, it just doesn't work on people who are firmly in Camp 1. You just get the cognitive dissonance, and actually the effects can prove destructive at times. You know, it can ruin relationships when people are just not at all on the same wavelength. So I think it is a useful thing, as you've described, Debbie, to be able to try and get a sense roughly of where people are within this framework, because it does help you to determine how to respond and how to communicate with them. Yeah, just before we go any further, I'll just make a few caveats. So I'm very happy to endorse the platform and the Camp 3 concept, obviously. But I should just point out, this isn't me endorsing every piece of content that goes on the platform, because I don't know who's going to post or everything that's going to go on. But as you mentioned before, Debbie, a lot of this is about intentionality and authenticity. And even if there are errors and mistakes or whatever, that's fine. It really is about the intent involved. Is that okay?
100%. I'd actually like to add to that caveat a number of things, because we are all human. I mean, I've actually made some notes on this, so I want to make sure that I include everything here, because we are all human and we will do our very best to bring the truth as we see it. But the secret is ourselves. The people that we need to be looking at is within ourselves, because we have to learn to discern. It's on everybody. We have to take responsibility for our own actions and what we choose to watch and who we choose to believe and what we choose to share. So I think in this age of disinformation and fake information, and where AI comes into so much, we have to be the ones to take it upon ourselves to go, well, actually, I'm gonna do a bit more research into this. And I know it's really easy to say do your own research, because we're going to do a lot of research. We're going to do a huge amount of research, but we'll bring you as close to the truth as we can. But we can't do everything. We are human, and this is the whole point. We're not going to be relying on ChatGTP. We're not going to be relying on fake evidence or kind of crazy stories. We're not going to try and mislead people. We're going to try and do the very best we can. That's our intention. We're not doing this for money. We're not doing this for fame or fortune, as I've said. We're just doing it because we think that Camp 3 is a place of where we would like to think it's safe and it's a sanctuary, and it will be a small camp. It will be a small camp, but as long as we remember that anybody coming to Camp 3, you're as interested and as committed to finding the truth as we are, and that's our intention. We are going to make mistakes, for sure. We're going to make mistakes, but I think as well as being authentic, we want to be transparent, right? And it's when in Camp 2, transparency seems to become opacity. And there seems to be, I liken it, I did ophthalmics for a very long time. And I nursed a lot of people with cataracts. And for those with cataracts, people will realize that the lens of the eye becomes cloudy from going from clear. So you've got clear sight. Over time, it becomes cloudy. And in the end, the lens is removed and replaced with what they called, or did call in my day, an intraocular implant. And I think in Camp 2, where we say this word transparency, we are transparent, it's very easy. It just rolls off the tongue and people don't really give too much consideration to it, but I do. And I see that some transparency is questionable and some conflicts of interests are questionable, just like the MHRA. It's just like, I'm giddy with the conflicts of interest. And where conflicts of interest are happening in government, they're happening also in Camp 1. We've got conflicts of interest with the BBC and Sky working with all sorts of globalists, and BlackRock and Amazon and Google and all the big ones. And likewise in Camp 2, we have also that conflicts of interests too. So it runs through all camps. All we can say is that we will do our very best, and that our intention is to bring people the truth. But if we've made a mistake, we'll apologize for it and we'll admit it, and we will be transparent. So if people ask us questions, we'll answer them as best we can.
Yeah, I'm glad that you used the phrase finding the truth, because I don't think this is about claiming to know the truth or to have all the answers, in inverted commas. This is a process, isn't it? It requires hard work. It requires constant vigilance. It requires willingness to challenge your own assumptions on things when necessary. So it's important people understand that, I think, from the outset. Ant, something else I wanted to bring up just in terms of caveats. Presumably, this isn't about recommending particular individuals who are deemed to be trustworthy, right? I mean, the whole idea is that people have to do the work for themselves. Is that fair?
Absolutely. We're in wartime, and I think what I've learned over the past few years is we've got to be really skeptical, and it's a horrible thing to be in, because you're almost on the verge of paranoia all the time. I've worked closely with a lot of people over the past few years, since the pub games, having speakers over, having a festival where we had many speakers, being involved in activism projects, and do I fully trust every individual that I've been with? No. And do I like them? Most of them, yeah. And it's so hard to discern. We're in a very, very tricky period in our human history right now. It's nothing's black and white in this world, and I wouldn't ever vouch 100% apart from Debi, because I think she's just amazing and so authentic and trustworthy. I'd struggle to vouch completely 100% with the majority of people I've come across. So we've got to have discernment, and people are going to write for us, I would expect. I hope people are going to write for us. We'd have guests on. We can't vouch for them 100%. This is good. This is going to be really tricky, and it's going to be down to the individual. But we will do our very, very best to have the right people involved in the project. We will do our very, very best to discern who is involved in the project as best as we possibly can. We've been stung over the past few years, and but it's easy to get misled in life, and I think, like Debi said, we've got to be prepared to accept if we have gone wrong anywhere. That's one of the most important things for me, especially during 2020, was, look, guys, it's okay to be wrong about this mainstream narrative. It's when you're trying to wake people up, like you say, you lose friends and family, and I lost plenty. And it's okay to be wrong about it. And it's all right, actually, to be wrong about Camp 2 as well. This is the thing, because most people will find themselves in Camp 2 the majority of time that are looking for truth. And there may be a little bit of soul searching that's going to be required at times to go, I'm a bit wrong here as well. I'm being Pied Pipered a little bit. I've been taken down the wrong path, and maybe this is the wrong place for me. And it's going to be tough for people, and that's why we wanted a Camp 3 website, eventually maybe a community that people can find themselves a home, because as it becomes more knowledgeable that there is a Camp 2 that is being, let's say, taking people down the wrong path. It's it's not the obvious ones. It's not your Russell Brands or whatever maybe that's playing the flute and jumping around and saying, come here, come here, come here. It's some of the ones that we've become to trust heavily over the past few years, heavily. And with that, you have an emotional attachment then. And there comes the cognitive dissonance that will come in the truther movement, because it'll be like, I don't want to let go of them because they've helped me a lot over the past few years, and it's going to be painful. So again, like the pub was a hub, I'm hoping that this is going to be another hub for people that are needing to find home.
Very good. Yeah, I think we've all had that experience, haven't we, of you kind of invest yourself in certain characters who maybe have done a lot of good in certain contexts and have spoken a lot of truth in certain contexts, but ultimately turn out to be not exactly what you thought they were. And you're right, again, it's that emotional, affective aspect to it. You know, it can be painful and difficult at that point to accept that and to detach and to move on. But I think that's increasingly what is required. The more I learn how much deceit there is in this landscape and how many kind of invisible networks and so on, it makes me very, very skeptical, and probably rightly so. Yeah. So, I mean, I talked briefly before about the three camps not being hard and rigid. You know, it's not necessarily that someone is firmly located in just one or other of the camps. People do move between these three camps, right? It's a journey, intellectually and emotionally, and you know, at times people are willing to go further into it and to invest more of themselves into it. Other times it can be painful. Yeah, people pull away again. The truth may be too difficult to handle. It may be that they feel that their career or their livelihood is too much under threat, and they come back out again. And then, of course, you have others that are simply bought and co-opted and so on. So even if they've kind of made it towards or even into Camp 3, they can be pulled back again. So I don't want people getting the idea that this is a very simple, hard and fast framework. People can go in multiple different directions, and then you have people who may be well-intentioned and genuinely committed to seeking the truth, but they've been taken in by Camp 2 propaganda and some of the actors within it. So again, it's difficult to classify those kinds of people because their heart might be in the right place, but they may just have been fooled. So I don't know if either of you have any further thoughts on the kind of the complexity that we're dealing with here.
And do you want to go first?
Well, it is so tricky because I mean, have I been in Camp 2? Yes, probably a lot, and I probably still dip in there quite a lot. You know, but it's like trying to figure out if I'm in there or not at the time. It's really, really tricky. You know, there's so many people involved in what you would class as Camp 2 that are very good people that want to do the very best for humanity, but don't really know that they're in it. They don't know who's pulling their strings. Oh, it's so tricky. It's so tricky, and this is why I think it needs a fresh platform. That's why it needs a leveling out. Really, this is not a funded project by any stretch. This is a volunteered project. You know, with no intention but trying to find the best for the people on the street. You know, my whole ethos from childhood has been about seeing people getting trodden on by bloodlines of elitist types, but then to see that also bleed into normal people who then trod on those people further. It's horrific, and and we need a level playing ground. We need to know who we're dealing with.
Just before Debbie comes in, I might just add to that NATO's cognitive warfare doctrine of 2020 actually talks about how in the era that we're now in, it's not just that individuals, for example, social media users, are passive recipients of propaganda, but they too help to spread it. And so millions of people are effectively being recruited into the information war in a way that they probably have no idea of and don't understand. And every time they like and retweet some of these ideas, they are becoming complicit in the spread of deceit, essentially. So there is a military context to all of this. And again, just adding to the complexity of it, I think it's also possible that people may kind of have a foot in Camp 3 on certain issues, but Camp 2 may be on others, because on every one of these issues, it does require a lot of research, and you can't expect people to have done extensive research of their own on every topic. So it may be that they're kind of further advanced in some areas than in others. Anyway, Debbie, did you want to come in at this point?
Oh no, I think both of you have made extremely valid points, but I don't think there is any delineation between the camps. I think I think it's a difficult journey. You know, right at the beginning we said that Camp 3 was very, very small, and it is, and it can be a very lonely place, because it is. And I think many people, when they understand the concept of Camp 1, Camp 2, Camp 3, there are many good people in Camp 2 who think they are in Camp 3 genuinely. And I think knowing that you've got a 3-camp concept is going to sort the wheat from the chaff. You're going to start to see people going, oh my goodness, I'm definitely not, I don't want to be associated. Because look, everywhere you go in any walk of life, there are going to be good people and there are going to be bad people. There are going to be scammers and there are going to be people that do things for different reasons, for good reasons, right? And that's no different to Camp 2. Camp 2 is exactly the same. It's just that we have to, you know, I always say gut feeling is really, really important. And that kind of visceral kind of feeling that you just know something's not right. And I always say to people, look, trust yourself. If something smells fishy, if it looks fishy, it probably is fishy. And that should alert you to maybe go and look a little bit deeper. We're not saying that everybody's got to do the amount of research that we do into who is who, or try to find out who's who. We can't guarantee that. We're not asking everybody to do that, but go with your gut feeling and listen to what is being told and listen to how it's being delivered. Is there a theme going on? Is there a repetition going on? Is there a narrative being followed? You know, are figures suddenly increasing? Ask yourself questions. We have to learn to trust ourselves, and I think gut feeling is important. And many people will keep their feet in. Many people will keep their feet probably on an eye on what's going on Camp 1. I do. I keep an eye on what the BBC is saying or what Sky News is saying, not because I believe what they're saying, but know thy enemy, right? So I keep I keep a little toe, maybe a little toe in, not a big toe, in Camp 1. But I also still respect a huge amount of people that seem to be in Camp 2, who may, when they realise that we exist in Camp, that they may want to join Camp 3, but they may decide to watch more people in Camp 2, keep an eye on what's going on. And this is the thing, like Ant said, like you said, David, we're in a war situation. Whether you like it or not, nobody's been brave enough to say it yet officially from official narrative government channels, but we are living in wartime and we have to do our very best to discern. And I think there's not a good or bad way. Of course you can keep your toes, your feet in all camps. That's the way to discern, to learn, but just ask questions. And if you've got a bad feeling about something, you're not quite sure, then question it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Constant discernment, constant questioning. That's what's required. And even for those who think they're in Camp 3, it has been suggested to me by multiple people that maybe there's a Camp 4, which involves, you know, kind of a deeper spiritual or religious level of awareness. You know, maybe these levels keep going deeper and deeper. And from our own limited perspective, we can't say how deep it goes. Ant, you talked about esoteric factors. Do you have any thoughts on a possible Camp 4?
Yeah, it's. I mean, I've over the past year and a half, I've interviewed a number of people that dive into that subject, you know, and there definitely seems to be interesting links from bloodlines to ritualistic kind of moments and what they may be gaining from it. So I'm not getting any hard evidence, but it's an interesting topic that I want to explore, and I'll continue to, you know, be it what this reality is, you know, so that that is, I suppose, a little bit of the Camp 4. You know, there's a lot more to this world than the material. There's a lot more than what we see with our eyes and hear, you know, with our senses, what we can interpret. And I truly believe that, and I've experienced that myself with doing Reiki as well, and some of the experiences I've personally had. But it's a subject I thoroughly enjoy diving into. And I welcome anybody to come on my podcast to have those kind of discussions, because I learn a great deal. However, as interesting as that all is, I find that the Camp 3 side of things is crucial right now. We've got to navigate our way through an horrific time for humanity, which is going to get a lot worse. And that's the realism of it all. And I don't like to say it, you know, and maybe, you know, the New Age movement would hate the fact that I'm even putting energy into that, because where energy goes, energy flows. I keep being told that maybe I'm going to manifest this kind of reality. But the truth is, we are in very difficult times, and we're not going to meditate our way out of this either. So there are things that we need to do, and that's why Debbie and I do what we do. I know that's why you do what you do, David, because there's something within us all. There is a divine spark within us all that's pushing us to make us do this, because it ain't for money, because I'm not getting any, you know, not with my YouTube channel anyway. If I get £60 to £100 a month on my YouTube channel, I've done well. So it's about the fact that it's for what's important, and that's what's driving me.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, one of the features of Camp 3 is that it can be supported by empirical evidence, typically. Whereas when you start going into a possible Camp 4, much harder to do that when you kind of start entering the kind of spiritual dimension to things. But again, having a bit of intellectual humility, you know, it does require us to stay open-minded. So you know, I'm certainly not averse to that idea. So I'm sure viewers and listeners at this point might be wanting to know, are there any kind of methods for determining who belongs in which camp? And you know, we don't necessarily have to name names here, but you know, I did ask you in advance to have a little think about this. I know you've made some notes, Debbie. In essence, how can we spot those who are in Camp 2?
Well, I think I've probably already alluded a little bit previously, because I do genuinely believe in gut feeling and authenticity, and everybody knows where their moral compass sits. I like personally where my moral compass is sitting at the moment, and I don't want to have it altered, fiddled with, changed, moved. I'm quite happy with where it is. So my gut feelings are very important to me, and I listen to them a lot now, and they're very rarely wrong. So I think we have to trust ourselves, and that's what I've done. So I think your methodology first is to go with your gut instinct, and think now is a conscious decision. Now we're bringing it to your attention that everything that happens in Camp 1 is happening in Camp 2, not across the board, but just in certain sections. And I'd like to say too, censorship. And we know censorship goes on in Camp 1, right? We know that the BBC and the mainstream, even internet, YouTube, and how we were censored during COVID. We were censored hugely. We were shut down. We were called all sorts of names, and we were literally cast out. And that happens too in Camp 2. So there is censorship that is going on in Camp 2. There are narratives. If there's a narrative, if you can see a narrative somewhere and you think, oh, this is being pushed a bit, question it. And I keep saying, question everything. You literally do have to question everything. So gut feeling, questioning everything, and question who you're listening to, because, you know, invariably in Camp 1, we're listening to trained journalists, or we're led to believe that. Well, I mean, I know there's probably quite a debate there with you, David, on whether they could be spies, military operatives, or whether they are genuine journalists. But we're led to believe that we are listening to journalists in Camp 1. In Camp 2, you've got no clue. So I'm not a journalist, you know, and I know that trained journalists, good journalists, honest journalists that are following good ethics, they say to me, "You're not a journalist, Debbie." And I go, "No, I'm not. So I'm going to stay in lane. I'm a nurse. I'm a granny, and I'm a mum, and I've got a few years life experience. I'm a pensioner, by the way. So that's what I survive on, my old age pension." So, you know, I think you need to look at, who are you listening to? What is their background? You know, where have they come from? Are they a cardiologist that are talking about cardiac? I mean, you know, are they trained? I look at the MHRA board meeting, and that's the government narrative. And I look at Raj Long on the MHRA board, and I don't know who the heck she is. She's got no qualification. She's not a doctor. She's not got any form of CV that I've found, and I've been looking for years. So you do need to do a certain amount of due diligence. You do. If you've got a gut feeling about someone and the narrative's not quite right, and there's red flags, I always go by red flags. So once you start seeing one red flag, my rule is, if I hear the same word, whatever that word is, 3 times in 48 hours, it's a red flag. If I get one red flag, then I look and think, right, okay, I've got to look out for some more. If I see the 3 red flags, I'm gone. And I'm like, this is the cutoff point. But that's just my little methodology, if you like. That's just the way that my system works. But I think follow the money as well, same as Camp 1. I know it sounds really crass, but it's very simple. Follow the money. So those are the things that I would highlight. And I know that, you know, propaganda as well. So that's where I would go on my methodology. I don't know if anybody else has got any thoughts.
Thanks, Debbie. Ant, anything to add? How would you go about spotting those in Camp 2?
I'm glad Debbie made notes. It's such a difficult question, I find. You know, you know, obviously, you know, as any individual on the street that you come across, that feeling, that gut feeling is crucial. And I've made so many mistakes in my life, and will continue to make plenty. And that's just the way life is. So we will make mistakes continually. How do we work that out? Well, I mean, the obvious ones for me are probably how channels just blow up so quickly. It's I know how hard this is. I've been in the sort of media game, if you like, on a personal level, and helping other corporation, not big corporation, but, you know, little businesses to try and make moves in social media. And it's hard. It's hard to navigate that and to build a following. It's not easy. And then you'll see the odd person just appear, and it's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And before you know it, they've thousands upon thousands of followers and thousands upon thousands of views, and it's getting shared all over the WhatsApp groups and this and that. Okay, it's interesting. I might be wrong, but it's interesting. And I think it's just putting a little question mark on that and just seeing where it goes, really, and not fully trusting everything, because we just can't trust everything we see here. Just can't.
Yeah.
And remember, people on screen aren't always the people off screen.
Oh, well,
Not
definitely.
always what you see is who you get.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said on this issue. You mentioned the word propaganda, Debbie, and one of the things that I've come to realize is that the propaganda techniques that are used in Camp 2 are actually very similar to those that are used in Camp 1. And so I think it's helpful to try and learn to recognize some of them. So you talked about the kind of the same concept coming up 3 times in 48 hours. And this is the idea of repetition in propaganda. All of a sudden, there's a key concept out there, you know, the new normal. 1 minute it's not there, the next minute every news channel, the new normal, the new normal, the new normal. That's one way of spotting these things. One way forms of communication as well. Professor Mark Crispin Miller, a veteran propaganda specialist, he calls this suasion as opposed to persuasion. So it's not really a dialogue. It's not an attempt to kind of have a back and forth communication, but just kind of beating people over the head with the same message all the time, without kind of recognizing a counter narrative. So, I mean, one example in the 9/11 context is, it was nanothermite, 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 and never any proper discussion or recognition of, for example, directed energy weapons, just dismissed. So kind of ignoring and downplaying of counter evidence. This goes on all the time in the mainstream media. I think it goes on just as much in the alternative media. You have these kind of false dichotomies that are created. Did the virus come from a lab in Wuhan, or was it a real virus? And it doesn't matter which side of the debate you choose to take. It's been framed in such a way that you can't even think, well, maybe there was no virus, which is the position I arrived at after extensive research on SARS-CoV-2. Thought terminating cliches as well, kind of anti-vaxxer, anti-Semite, all of this is kind of used. And when you find people resorting to ad hominem rather than engaging in genuine, authentic discussion and debate, I think that's another red flag. And it escalates as well. When you see individuals engaging in lawfare, I mean, this is when it gets really serious. If you're really trying to shut someone down and you resort to the law courts, again, this is what states do, but it's also what certain individuals in Camp 2 have resorted to. And I think also, just muddling up ideas which might be worthwhile or genuinely critical with just nonsense ideas, so that those who have not learned the required level of discernment, they just kind of accept everything. Some things which might be true, but other things which are frankly ridiculous, and it all just gets muddied up. And so kind of epistemically, you can't really tell the difference. I think that's another tactic which goes on in this community. So yeah, there's quite a lot to say. I mean, you mentioned censorship as well, Debbie. It's not just that certain accounts get artificially boosted, as Ant was describing, but also there's quite a bit of kind of shadow banning and censoring of particular viewpoints, even within the Camp 2 community. And part of the reason for that, I think, is that there are networks involved which are often under the surface, which you often don't see. And so you find different actors acting in unison, in coordination. It's kind of, they're like actors on script in a way. So again, when you see the same kind of concepts, debates, arguments suddenly coming out of nowhere, advanced by multiple different people at once, that is surely a cause for suspicion. And Wikipedia pages is another interesting tell. Of course, Wikipedia bans pages on particular individuals who perhaps get too close to the truth. It smears other individuals. But if you have a Wikipedia friendly page on a person, they're not likely to be Camp 3. So yeah, plenty to say. I think broken promises as well is another way of looking at some of these characters. It's very easy, for example, as Donald Trump does in Camp 1, you promise the world to people and then deliver virtually none of it. True of most politicians, in fact. But even in Camp 2, you get figures like RFK Jr. He won so many people's trust through his work with Children's Health Defense and so on, his seemingly critical stance on vaccines. And now, wouldn't you know it, he's at the heart of delivering the Maha agenda. So you kind of find these kind of turncoats as well. So I think there's a lot of ways of of trying to identify some of these individuals. It might even be worth trying to produce a guide that people could use to try and do it, because it is tricky. So anyway, I've spoken for quite a while there. Did either of you want to pick up on any of those points before we move on?
I think I need a guide as well, though, David. That's the thing, you know, and I'll just pulling on RFK as well. It's you know, I remember being on the plane to Italy in 2021, listening to the audio book of the Fauci book that he wrote, and you are taken in by that. You think you've got someone that's going to help you. You know, one of the things I find in this situation that we're in is apathy is one of the biggest problems in the population. You know, I love my dad to bits, and I remember in 2020, you know, my dad said to me, "Look, why are you bothering with all this? There's always going to be somebody higher up that's going to solve it for you. Everything will be fine." And this is a problem. This is a big problem, because it takes away our responsibility as people with awareness. Unfortunately, I was invited to do a talk the other day at an event. I only had a few minutes. I'll not go into too much detail, but I was ranting by the time I was going on stage, and I basically said, you know, we're in trouble right now. And I'm sorry to say it, guys, but everybody in this room, you have a responsibility, because you know what's going on. And this is down to us as people. This is down to us. Nobody else is going to come and save us. Donald Trump's not going to come and save us. You know, we're not going to meditate ourselves out of this. And this is the thing. It's like, unfortunately, the RFK thing, I saw it when I was trying to show it on Facebook. The amount of people that took offense to what I was saying about RFK, massive offense. And they do it about Donald Trump all the time. You know, so this is a tricky period, and this is going to be tricky for Camp 2 people. When fingers start being pointed, it'll be like, I'm not having it. There's no way he or she is pulling me down the merry path. There's no way. I've followed this person for 6 years. It's going to be difficult, this.
That's right. Yeah, the cognitive dissonance can be just as strong, can't it?
Yeah.
Coming out of Camp 2 as coming out of Camp 1.
Absolutely.
Debbie, any further thoughts before we go on?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just want to reiterate, you know, repetition. That's always a good sign that something's going wrong. But, you know, Camp 2 can be very dangerous. It can be a very dangerous place. And don't forget that it can be. I'm not saying that everybody in Camp 2 is a dangerous person. I'm not saying that at all. But there are dangerous situations in Camp 2. And I think there are also stalwarts to Camp 2 that I think you know, I'm the same. You know, I follow some people. I wouldn't say the word religiously, but I follow them quite a lot, and I do look to them for advice, whether it be about something to do with the sun, or whether it's weather, or, you know, who do you trust? So you do have stalwarts that won't have a word said about bad about anybody, because they follow that person, then they're absolutely trusting them, like people do in Camp 1. And I think in Camp 2, we have a lot of creators, but we have to ask, what do they create and for what reason? What is their intention? When it comes to Trump, I think it's hilarious, because I agree with that. Trump's not here to save us. And I think Trump has his foot. I think he's got one foot in Camp 1, a big foot, but I think he's got then his hands and fingers in Camp 2, because, I mean, let's look at his Truth Social, fake news, you know. So there he is professing that, oh, don't worry about me, folks. I'm not in Camp 1. I'm in Camp 2. No, you're not, Don. No, you're not. Really? But I think, you know, it can be misleading. You can just be aware you can be scammed in Camp 2. Just like you can be scammed in Camp 1, you can be scammed in Camp 2. So you have to do your due diligence. Think of it like a tree. So you see a tree in Camp 1, and it's a BBC tree. So it's a massive oak, absolutely huge. It's got a huge canopy. Loads of people are sheltering underneath it, but it has a massive root system. and the routes aren't something that you get to see. Where do the routes go? Well, they'll tell you a bit about their roots and about how much rainfall that tree's had and how old that tree is and a bit of history. They'll tell you a bit about it, but they won't tell you all about it. Now look at Camp 2 and see that as another tree, an oak tree that's not been there for quite so long, that's fairly new, but it's established. And likewise, the canopy may not appear as big as Camp 1, but it is, because it's growing and growing and growing. It's thriving. But the root system underneath is just as deep, and you don't get to see it. So you don't know the span of that root system. Now, Camp 3, we're a little sapling. We're a little sapling. And you know, people are gonna maybe criticize us. Of course they will. People try and chop us down. Of course they will. We're only a little tree. But we're a genuine tree, and we're a tree that's been planted with love and with the intention to do nothing, to do no harm, which, as many people that have known me over the years will know, that's my saying, do no harm. Tender loving care for everyone, everywhere. That's the ethos that we're following. So we're a little sapling. But look at Camp 2 as just the same as Camp 1. And as we now start to make people aware that there is the existence of Camp 3, then I think a lot of people are going to go, oh, I thought I was in Camp 3, and they'll question everything. And that's the whole idea of this, is to get people talking, to get people debating. And everybody wants to know, which camp are they in? Or maybe they're in this one for that and that one for that. We all want to self-identify, right? So, you know, I'm seeing everything as a positive, and Camp 3 is a new concept, a new home, a new place for people to go that may suddenly start to feel a bit homeless.
I like your metaphor. A sapling, perhaps, but as Ian
Strong
Brown
word.
sang in 2020, from a little seed comes a big tree.
Absolutely.
So I also want to draw your attention to some potential risks to your Camp 3 News project. I'll just put 4 points to you and let you respond. The first risk, I thought, is that, you know, that there might be various charlatans who start claiming to be Camp 3, you know, and kind of trying to appropriate the label for themselves when they're not worthy of it. I'm minded, for example, of what to me seemed to be a quite cynical embrace of Christianity, all at the same time, of course, around 2022, by various well-known characters in the so-called alt media. And it was a shame, because the whole kind of spiritual war concept became almost a cliche at that point. You know, it kind of got diluted, almost a meme. You know, kind of lost its real meaning. So there's that problem. The idea that the brand itself might thereby get hijacked, I think, is an issue. There's also the danger that you might be misrepresented by certain bad actors as maybe kind of over-promising. You know, that you're the place to go for the truth, you know, capital T. Or you might get straw-manned as, you know, being like a one-stop shop for the truth, or something like that. And the final risk I wanted to put to you is that, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit already, but, you know, what happens if you do get fooled and certain contributors to your platform later on turned out not to be who you thought they were? So your thoughts on these potential risks?
Well, for me, I think in Camp 1, we know there are trusted messengers, and we have trusted messengers in Camp 2 as well, or people who like to say that they're trusted messengers and become trusted. Will we be represented as over-promising, as maybe providing a one-stop shop? Sure. I'm sure we'll be accused of all sorts of things. And I think what I would like to say is something that you brought up earlier, actually, David, which is broken promises. And because I'm a jelly bean, I don't do broken promises. I don't like broken promises. In fact, I loathe broken promises. My kids could not cope with broken. If I said to my kids, we're going out somewhere, wherever it was tomorrow, we'd have to go, whether it was raining, whatever was going on. If I'd made a promise, you have to keep it. We're not going to promise anything because we don't do broken promises. However, we will remain authentic. We will remain humble. We will listen to everybody. We will apologize when we've got something wrong. We will be transparent. When questions are asked, we'll answer them. We don't have anything to hide. That's the beauty of Camp 3, is we don't have anything to hide. We're volunteers. We've got no skin in the game. There's no reason that Ant or I or you, David, should be doing any of this. We've all got kids. We've all got lives. We've all got our own agendas. We don't have to do this. We're doing it for the right reasons. And, you know, essentially Camp 3 is here to guide, to be a guide, a signpost, somewhere to go, somewhere that people may find it easier to navigate, somewhere where people may find more of their tribe in a certain area. It may be one area that they're particularly interested in. And that's why I think the blend of Ant and I together goes really well, because Ant, as he said, you know, maybe there is a Camp 4, and I'm very interested in spirituality. I've always have been. So there's a deep spiritual side to me, but there's also, which I didn't really know existed, but there's this researcher. Well, I did kind of know because of all the work I've done in autism and all in my life. I love to research, and I just seem to have an ability to join dots, and I like factual evidence. So I know that people watching, they haven't got a lot of time, even though this interview is quite a long interview, they haven't got a lot of time to watch a lot of news, which is why I was doing 7 stories in 7 minutes. And it's like bang, 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 bang. You haven't got time to watch 3 people, 3 hours all at once. So we're going to give news. We're going to give factual news that will affect each and every one of us on everyday levels. We're going to cover Ant's very interested in geopolitical news and keeps an eye very closely over the ocean. I keep my eye on what's going on globally as well. But I also focus very much on the NHS, on health, on DWP, on housing, on council tax, on taxation, on HMRC, and the government, and the MHRA. Never forget the MHRA. So, you know, we will try to bring you what we think are the important issues. Everybody's going to have a different opinion. We think that's healthy. We actually really, we ask people to give us constructive feedback. Don't throw custard pies at us. Please don't throw custard pies at us. But we will be transparent. And by that, I mean transparent. We're not going to become opaque. We won't have a hidden agenda. We're not censoring anybody. If there's a topic that we feel and that you, the audience, ask for, that you feel is important, we will endeavour to do what we can to cover it. You know, it's a two-way journey, and people that know me from UK Column will know that I very much relied on our audience, because our audience are experts in their own rights. You know, whether or not they're experts in law or health, or they're experts by experience because they're vaccine injured, or they've gone through an experience and now they've become an expert in it. We want to hear from everybody. So Camp 3 is for anybody that just wants to share our ethos of doing things because you just want to help humanity. I know that sounds really crass. And what if we get fooled? We will get fooled. We will get fooled. Of course we'll get fooled. Everybody gets fooled. We are human. That's what we're trying to stay, not transhuman. We don't want to be merged with technology. We want to be human. We want to have feelings. We want you to see our feelings as well. And we want to share your feelings. That's what humanity is all about. So, yes, we probably will be misrepresented. Yes, there probably will be charlatans. Yes, we probably will be fooled. We will be conned. We will be bad-mouthed and everything else. But you know what? We've come this far. We're still in one piece. We're still together, and we're still human. So we're going to make mistakes, but we hope that people will bear with us and support us.
A very honest reply. Okay, well, you mentioned time. You've both been very generous with your time. I guess my final question on the Camp 3 News platform. Ant, how do you see this new platform growing and developing over time? I mean, do you have a kind of a vision for the platform? You know, where would you like it to go?
I've no vision really, apart from it's there, and we're gonna give it our best shot, and just deliver our authentic selves within that project, and hope that people like us. I'm sure some people will and some people won't, and that's fine, because that's what it's about. And I think Debbie and I just want to do the best we can in the mission that we feel that we have. You know, it's within us, and we want to enjoy it as well while we're doing it, because we're in hard times, and we want people to come and enjoy what we deliver. And hopefully it will grow, and people will recognize it as a useful area to be, and not just useful, but a place where they feel comfortable to be. And you know, I with my experience with the pub, again, going back to that time, people made great friends at that time. They found a home. It became a hub, and that's what I think we want, really, where people feel this disillusionment that's going to happen. It will, because it did in 2020. You know, when people lost their friends and family and they had nowhere to go, it's the same again. So I just hope that we have a space that people feel comfortable, because things are very uncomfortable right now, and it's going to get more uncomfortable, I think, as the next few years progress. So let's see.
Definitely. Yeah. And can you remind us one last time, Ant, where to find the new platform?
Absolutely. So it's www.camp3news.com, and it's a number 3, not spelled out. So feel free to take a look. Feel free to join the mailing list, and we will probably launch the new show, rebrand Debi, the Banter with Debi, within the coming weeks, and go ahead with that as well. So, you know, we're on YouTube under the Stellify podcast for that show. We're going live every Friday, currently at 1, but we are talking about changing those particular times. So just keep in touch with us on that, and we'll let you know any changes.
Very good. Well, it's a worthy and exciting venture, and I wish you both all the very best with it. So very best of luck to both of you. I do hope to be a contributor to Camp 3 News myself. And
that'd be great.
All the best for the project.
Thank you, David.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you for Camp 1, Camp 2, Camp 3 framework, because without it we wouldn't be here. Thank you, David.
Yeah, thanks, David. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.